happy to have you here with us. Sorry. I'm so happy to have you here with us this evening for our inaugural event. We're hoping to have these regularly, like with the seasons. A winter one. We haven't planned them, but that is the plan. The plan is to do this on regularly, give you information, invite some panelists here to talk about the issues that we are currently facing and how those are impacting us in FCPS. It's an educators forum, so really it's not just for educators, but it's to talk about all things education and really including how these things impact our our ability to field of Black educators in our school division, which is something that is part of our strategic plan. It is a mission of FCPS to make sure that we do right by all of our students by giving them a diverse diverse group of teachers. On November 12th, we had our first State of the Schools event with Dr. Reed. That's another event that we're hoping to provide for us on a regular basis. It was led by me and our then chair of legal redress, Mike Woltz. And as he said in that forum, you wouldn't be seeing the chair of the legal redress committee heading an education forum unless if everything was copacetic. If everything was okay, why would a legal redress person be there? And the reason was because there were some issues. So we had that conversation with Dr. Reed. It was, at times uncomfortable, but she faced all of those questions. We had a frank conversation. And we were talking about a lot of the issues that tend to primarily impact Black students and staff. And it was centered around Dr. Reed's oft-repeated mantra. She says, if we walk by inequity or mediocrity and we do not attend to it, we have lost the moral authority to lead. And, that's sort of I believe in that as a credo. I believe she also believes in that as a credo, but nonetheless, that happens here at FCPS all the time. We are regularly faced with inequities and mediocrity that impact students disproportionately. And so, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And then now, in light of the current threats to education, how do we fare? What do we do? That's sort of what this is about today. And we'll see how the conversation goes. We have a lot of questions that people have submitted, and we'll have the chat is open for questions, and we'll be reviewing the chat and trying to get to those also. We have tonight, I have my co-chair, Marquis, who is a teacher in FCPS. He's also a union leader, he's a filmmaker, and he brings a lot to this committee, and I am happy to be doing this with him. This is really, his baby, and I'm just here to help facilitate. We also have Levi Goren, Director of Research and Education Policy at the Commonwealth Institute. We will make sure we drop all these links in the chat as well. Where their job is leading TCI's analysis on education funding, making sure that they are doing the strongest analysis is being brought to bear on key issues facing communities of color and low-income families. We have Dr. Nardos King, currently serving as Chief Equity Officer for FCPS, but she's held many positions in this county and others and has a view on our school division from many different angles. Likewise, we have Dr. Iona Spikes, President of FABSE, Fairfax Alliance of Black School Educators, also FCPS Director of Equity and Family Engagement. She's also held many positions in this school division and others, and has a lot of information to offer us. And so I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, tell more information as they think is pertinent when they speak. But I want to just do that quick introduction so you know who's here with us. And you know me, I am Sujatha Hampton. I am the one of the co-chairs of the Education Committee, and I have been for a while, so you may have seen me doing things before. I am going to turn this over to Marquis, who's going to do our opening address, and then we'll start the conversation.
Well, thank you, Sujatha, and welcome everyone. We are so glad and privileged to have you with us tonight. Please check out the chat, and I'll repost all these links again for any information you might need about our panelists, as well as our organizations that the panelists are representing, along with FCPS schools. So you can really see what kind of opportunities are out there as well for you to join in the movement and coalesce with us as we continue to build some power in this area around how we're going to address a lot of these education issues that we're currently facing right now, whether it be nationally and locally. So please feel free to also drop questions in the chat, and we'll also have a segment and time allotted to an open Q&A session with the audience once the panel discussion comes to a close, and we'll have panelists available to answer any direct questions that people might want to ask um, during that segment as well. So to kick us off and building off of what Sujatha started us with, I just want us to, really take a moment, take a deep breath. I remember one of my favorite Martin moments was, Martin Lawrence moments was the woo-saw. So I think right now in this current state of education and the attacks on it, I think now is a perfect time for everybody to just, especially if you're doing the work, like those of us doing the work and those of us who are invested in this space, we already know that it's a lack of appreciation space overall, especially in our, country where, it's politicians and movie stars and athletes who are getting paid, and corporate CEOs who are getting paid the big bucks, but the people who actually impact the most lives are actually, tend to be at the bottom of the pay scales, or not necessarily respected for what we do. And, now would be a good time. Take some deep breaths, have your favorite drink, sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation as we get into how we're going to move forward in our area around overcoming these challenges. Because one thing I know that the NAACP is famous for is confronting and overcoming challenges throughout the history of our organization. And this will be one of those moments, because I can guarantee you that I won't be a part of the generation that drops the ball. So here we are. Um, so with that said, I want to just lay out the groundwork for what we're facing right now, particularly in Fairfax. Particularly in Fairfax, and then I'll get to nationally, because I think the local state of the union is even more important, because we actually have the power to control what's in our purview. We have the power to, continue to lobby legislators in Virginia. We have the power to continue to coalesce and build union power, as we're one of the collective bargaining agreement units now, along with other counties like Prince William and Montgomery in the area, just to name a few. So there is change happening, in a positive way. And I want us to really, consider the positive things and the positive work that we've been doing, because what's most important is acknowledging what you're accomplishing and how you're doing it, so that you can then pass that legacy on to others and continue to help, especially those young people that you're educating, see how it's never too late to fight for what you know is right. And, as the great Dr. King once said, there's just never a time to sit idly by and let things happen to you without taking any recourse on your own. And so here we are. And in Fairfax County, we are currently dealing with all kinds of, you know, divergent issues, but mostly funding issues. And we'll continue to see how we're gonna come together to solve a lot of those problems together. And hopefully, a lot of you on this call that want to be a part of that solution will join us in the education committee here on the NAACP to continue to create ideas and craft plans for how we can better our conditions. Whether it be working conditions, compensation conditions, and whatever that might be. And also another way to do that would be to join the local unions, which, have now merged into what's called the Fairfax Education Union, represented by one faction, the Fairfax Education Association, where you can find the link in the chat, and I'll post those again. And then the Fairfax County Federation of Teachers, where, we have joined together and created and worked with the Fairfax County Public Schools Division to have the first collective bargaining agreement in 47 years, which again shows how much change is on this horizon and how the current modern day landscape is looking positive, as long as we take action and continue to grow our numbers and continue to grow our power. So with that said, I'm going to move us right into some data that we might get from one of our panelists and guests, Levi, who works with the Commonwealth Institute. And I really want Levi to kick this off with just some kind of, data that they're seeing, in a sense of what's most prevalent right now. Levi, what are you seeing that's really catching your attention and, making you perk up when it comes to the state of education?
Sure, and thanks for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you all and the incredible work that you're doing in the classrooms and beyond. So thank you. I think one thing I guess I'd like to start with is some good news, which is we now have a revised state budget for this current school year and the upcoming one. And Virginia's legislators are continuing to increase investment in our public schools. And that's the result of a lot of hard work by advocates over the years. So for Fairfax County, that's going to mean about $50 million in additional state funding over the course of the current year and next year. Some of that is dedicated to real specific things like some bonuses for teachers and school staff, but some of it is essentially flexible state funding, better paying the state share of stuff Fairfax was already doing with their own money, with your own money. So that means that it's an opportunity for you as local advocates to, talk with your school division, your school board members, et cetera, about what it is you think should be done with the additional resources that are being coming in from the state. So that's, I think, some good news that has recently happened. I think Sujatha asked me to come prepared to talk some about the federal threats also and like what that could mean for Fairfax County. I think it looks like Fairfax County Public Schools currently receives about $208 million in federal funding for a wide variety of things, including about 40 million for students with disabilities, 35 million for students in low-income communities through Title I, and about 30 million for school meals. As you all know, there's a variety of threats to that funding that I'll touch on very briefly, but I don't want to take up too much time in this introductory part. The other thing, though, I think to think about is about 20% of Fairfax County public school students get their health care through Medicaid. And there's a very serious attempt right now on the part of folks in Congress to reduce access to Medicaid or reduce benefits. And that will affect our schools because, well, first of all, students need to be healthy in order to be prepared to learn and need to have access to healthcare. But also a lot of healthcare services are actually delivered in the school buildings, as many of you probably know. And Medicaid pays for a lot of those services, particularly for students with disabilities, but not only. So that's another thing to think about as we think about threats to public education right now. But I guess stepping back more broadly, I think there's really two buckets of major concerns for our federal for our public schools from the federal government. And one of those broad buckets is these administrative actions that the Trump administration is attempting to do, executive orders, clawbacks of funds, various threats without congressional approval, right? So that's one of the sets, is like using the administrative power to try to do things without congressional approval. And then there's another bucket of concerns related to potential federal budget cuts through the congressional reconciliation process, which could, in a more lawful way, reduce support for our schools and for the students who need the most support. So I don't know, I might just stop there unless you want me to get into more details on all that, because I think maybe, go ahead.
That's right there, a mouthful and a mindful right there. Like the way. Thank you for all the great work that you guys are doing, and really helping educate us on what the state of the current situation is, and really appreciate that so much. Thank you. I want to pivot now to Nardos, Dr. Nardos King, and our diversity representative from Fairfax County Public Schools, and get your take on some of the things that you're seeing that people need to be aware of and are prevalent in your mind.
So Marquis, I just want to, start off by telling people what I do, because I think that people think I just do diversity. And, I'm responsible for several departments in Fairfax County Public Schools, to include the equity team, but student conduct. So I'm responsible for the students' rights and responsibilities And we update that every year, right? And student discipline is very important because we deal with disproportionality. And my team monitors that and trains and supports schools where discipline disproportionality shows up. I'm also responsible for TJ admissions, those the students who apply to Thomas Jefferson School of Science and Technology. My team is responsible for the process of, the application process. I also run the Title IX office, the superintendent's hearings office. And so all of that encompasses the Chief Equity Office in Fairfax County Public Schools. And to be quite honest, I appreciate Levi's voice here at this panel today, but I know that there's a lot of noise going on in our country. But our superintendent has asked us to remain focused on why we show up for work every day. And so my focus is really about how can the work that I do every day help us reach the goals of our strategic plan. Are we ensuring through my work and the team that I supervise that third graders are going to be on grade level reading by the third grade? Are all students going to have access to Algebra or be enrolled at the minimum in Algebra 1 by the 8th grade? And are our students having access to high quality programming through our patterns of what we offer them? And that's what I focus on every day. So yes, I watch the news and I hear the noise, but when I come to work every day, I block that out and I focus on the children because the work that we do is important. We have a responsibility to make sure that the students in Fairfax County have, excellence every day, that there's equity that shows up every day in the classroom, and that's what we're focused on. So I appreciate that Levi's here to talk about that because it's important for everybody to know and be educated. And it's not that we are ignoring it, right? My superintendent does a great job of keeping us focused on what we need to do. But day to day, I'm worried about, can Johnny read?
I feel you. Thank you. And that is a challenge in itself. So appreciate you for sharing that. And in this moment, is there anything that you can share with the audience around what, say somebody not in your division, what ways can we support your work and all you do? Because it sounds like, remind me of that old joke back in the days about, just having 10 jobs.
Yeah, well, I think everybody at the chief level has 10 jobs, but we all love it.
Right.
I think that, it's very important for all community members to partner with the school district. Our superintendent is probably the most visible and active superintendent that I've ever worked for when it comes to engaging the community. She listens and wants to hear from the community, right? How is your experience in our schools? And, it's easy for people sometimes to get on social media and complain about the school system. But complaining about the school system on social media is not going to bring change to your experience. But showing up at meetings, getting engaged in all the different ways that we allow our community groups to get involved is the best way that you can support me in our work. Because if you're knowledgeable around the work and you understand what our goals are every day, then you can help policymakers, you can help people who fund us recognize the importance of ensuring that our budget is met, right? We don't make up stuff in our budget, fluff. There's no fluff in Fairfax County Public Schools. Every penny goes to help reaching us the goals in that strategic plan. And I think it's important for all community members to use their time and advocacy when it comes to education on supporting their local schools. So showing up to board meetings so that you understand what policymakers are doing every day to support our schools and lending your voice, right? When our school board members talk, they speak about their constituents. Are you a constituent that they're speaking about because you took the time to learn what we're trying to get done in the school system and help advocate for that work? I think that that's most important for our community members to educate yourself around what our goals are and how you can advocate to make sure that we have the funding that we need and the policies that we need to make those goals come into fruition.
Well, thank you again for that. And now we're going to jump right into Dr. Iona Spikes and share with us your background as well as what you do with the Fairfax Alliance of Black School Educators.
Yes, thank you so much, Marquis, and NAACP for inviting me to this panel tonight. So fundamentally, the Fairfax Alliance of Black School Educators is an organization of Black educators who are really committed to making sure that our Black students and staff are seen, heard, and visible within the community, within the school system. So all things Fairfax County Public Schools, we want to make sure that not only do we have a seat at the table, but we're also involved in decision-making processes, advocacy, just in terms of like the way the school system is running and what people's experiences are in our school system. So FABSE was chartered in Fairfax in 2005 and by 30 members of community, Black educators. And our founding president is yours truly, Dr. King. So Dr. King was actually the founding president and worked with other leaders and administrators to start FABSE. And so as an affiliate of the larger organization, we are really aligned with the National Alliance of Black School Educators, who really this year, this cycle, are really focusing on professional development, like extending learning and development and leadership opportunities to our Black educators. We're focused on recognizing our teachers and their accomplishments. Marquis, you kind of talked about that from the rip, right? And thinking about that, right, we need to make sure that we're feeding into our teachers and our, because being an educator is just not easy work, right? And we know every single day is another executive order or is another something going on. And so we need to make sure that we're keeping our educators fed. We need to make sure that we're affirming them, that they know that they are valued, and that they know, again, that they have a seat at the table and their voices will be heard. And so some of the work that, or the background of FABSE is really around advocacy. Everything is grounded in advocacy. So that shows up when we're, having a representative on the Minority Student Oversight Committee, who's making sure that our Black students have access and opportunity not only to advance curriculum, but also they're getting exposure and opportunities so that they can be set up to thrive and set up to be successful later on in life, right? So we need that they know that there are programs out there and they have access to these things. Our advocacy looks like working with the HR office and looking at what practices are put into place that intentionally tries to recruit, hire, retain, and even promote our Black educators. We have other programs that we do a lot of collaboration with, like the HE, like our Hispanic Association, our Asian Association, but really just making sure that our non-white staff members and specifically our Black educators really have access and opportunity, as well as the students and families. So we want to advocate for our students. We want to advocate for our families. We want to make sure that we're pushing information out. Dr. King talked about just being informed and being engaged. And that's a really big part of it. So where we can share information and make sure that, all of our families really understand how the system operates and ways that they should show up for their children. Because we know sometimes in any system, when it is often the parents that are, very active and engaged. Those are the parents whose students tend to be a little bit more, be considered a little bit more, or maybe have other opportunities. So we want to make sure that all our parents, our Black parents, are engaged and they know what's going on and they know where to go and who to talk to, because sometimes if you're not an educator, you don't even know how to for your student. So we want to make sure that we do that too. And so there are several different things that FABSE has advocated for. And one of the main things that we do as an organization is we do scholarships. So we offer scholarships to our students every year. Matter of fact, our scholarship ceremony is going to be at the end of the month. So we're excited about that. And 90% of our dues and joining fees go to a scholarship. So we're really big about making sure that our kids have, whatever resources they need and connecting them to other resources so that they can transition. So those are just some of the things that FABSE does within Fairfax County Public Schools, and also making sure that we meet as frequently as possible with whether it's Dr. Reed, our superintendent, or our chiefs, and supporting the work that Dr. King is doing in the Chief Equity Office. We do try and stay connected. We have a member of our team that's serving on the boundary committee. So we're really trying to be out there and engaged and know what's going on so that we can in turn support our community and our families and our students.
Thank you so much for that. And really, I want to just remind everybody on this call that that's two divisions, organizations that you really need to reach out to and engage with more, from our Chief Equity Officer, as well as to the Fairfax Alliance of Black School Educators. Please join those missions and organizations so that we can continue to share information, build strength, and continue to educate our communities at the highest levels. And so pivoting back really quickly, Levi, I got to ask you that same question around the Commonwealth Institute. Like, I'm new to Virginia, so I had never heard of the Commonwealth Institute until Sujatha had brought it to my attention. So how can people, especially in the education field, or even people who are community activists and advocates, in the area, how can we partner or engage with the Commonwealth Institute?
Sure. So we do research and advocacy on state policy issues, but much of what we do is partner with community-based organizations to make sure that they have the information they need to do your work. So I think there's a lot of things you can do. One is you're always welcome to join our listserv, or our email list, I should say, and that we have action alerts sometimes on that. But you also are welcome to just reach out to me, and I'll put my email in the chat if you have a question about like something data related for Fairfax schools. And it might be something that you're able to get internally, but if it's something that's like more of a state data source, I might be able to help with that. We also, of course, welcome folks who want to engage with their state legislators and, make the case for why we need it. I would say more adequate and more equitable investments in our schools. Those are sort of our dual things we're going for in the education space, is adequacy and equity, to make sure, because we know that additional funding does the most good for students who face the highest barriers. So I think those are a couple of the ways. We also work in the Fund Our Schools Coalition with other organizations from across the state. So you're welcome to check out Fund Our Schools, and it has a number of membership-based organizations in it that you are, I think, also probably very welcome to get in touch with and join. And if you're a part of a membership organization or advocacy organization who would like to talk about joining that Funding Adequacy and Equity Coalition, please feel free to reach out to me or to anyone else I put that link on the chat also. So yeah, that's I think I would just say, Dr. King mentioned that, staying focused locally, and I totally agree that that's important. Like, you can make a much bigger difference talking to your school board member or your Board of Supervisors member or your state legislator, because they don't hear from that many people about a lot of policy issues. So your voice goes really far in making the case. And we know that education is mostly a state and local issue. The federal government has some role in it and provides some funding, but it's very little compared to the role of the state and local government.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And you guys are amazing. Thank you for making my night so awesome. And I'm gonna pivot back to Sujatha right now because Sujatha, I'm sure you got some thoughts
I got some
swirling
thoughts.
in that head.
I got some thoughts, ladies. You know I've got some thoughts. So yes, I do completely. I believe you that you go into work and you have a goal. We have a strategic plan, and I know you both. I know how committed you are to that. I know that you are, very committed to our Black students. I know very committed to having Black excellence in our education staff. But our schools are not equitable. So they just simply are not equitable. So they aren't. And we have systems in place. And both of you know that. You know that they're not equitable. So I know you know that because I've talked to you both, and I know that you know that, even though you know me, right? So we know, we all know, maybe everybody on this call knows they aren't equitable, despite you getting up every day and working till God knows what hours until the school board meeting might be over, whatever o'clock. They aren't equitable. Despite Dr. Reed, I fully believe that she is fully committed to that strategic plan and that she wants all of our students to be all of those things, algebra by 8th grade, and she shared at our State of the Schools event these, that there's been some incremental change. It's in the positive direction in various things, in various metrics, graduation rates, algebra by 8th grade, all of those things, yes. But we have some things, and I have to speak, I just want to throw out there, for example, the Equity Lead Program. Allow me to just throw that as an example, the Equity Lead Program, which I know is under the auspices of your office, Dr. King. So that position is there to be sort of a building level, eyes on the school level, a place to go with equity issues. There's a person there who's supposed to be trained. But we have a school division that is disproportionately, we have underrepresentation in our of minority teachers, right? But more than that, we have building level issues and we have RAS issues, which I mentioned in the State of the Schools, and you both know this. So like, despite, like when you, Dr. Spikes, when you were talking about the, usually the parents who are engaged, we're talking about PTA parents, oftentimes their children get preferential, like that. Yeah, yes, we know that PTAs are notoriously racist organizations. We know that too. I don't know how you all felt about it, but it was not a very welcoming place for me when my kids were in schools. It has a history of being racist and segregationist. It continues to this day. This organization gets all of those complaints that are happening in our schools, one after another. And so yeah, we really have a principal problem. That's not, and nobody's going to be, this is not a surprise to anybody that I'm going to say that. So despite your best efforts, you have all of these efforts. And I believe you, Dr. Spikes, when you're talking about these Black parents, engaging these families, trying to make sure that they have power in schools, ability to speak truth to power, and to defend their children. It's really, you're at the mercy of building level leadership. And we know that we have a serious problem with building level leadership. I'm not going to say we don't. We do have a serious problem with building level leadership. Okay, so that's one thing with regard to the parent part. But with regard to the equity lead part, I know there was an equity lead meeting recently, because I just heard about that, where there was a tacit acknowledgement that the value of the program had to do with this building level leadership. That was what people who, your staff, having to acknowledge that we can only make it as good as we can make it. It has to do with who you have in your building, who is your equity lead and who is your principal, because for a lot of principals, they just simply, that is not anything that they think is particularly important. And as you've heard me say a million times, and I will say it again here, I really do believe that white people do not believe that Black parents love their children as much as white parents do. And so that you see it in these parent issues and you see it in this equity issue. And I know at least you, Dr. King, I know that you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just gonna throw it out there because I understand what you're saying because that's the goal. What you guys both are talking about is the goal. But if we're gonna be having an education forum and we're gonna be doing this regularly, we cannot be talking without speaking the truth. We just can't. It's a waste of everybody's time. So what can we do? Because you know that has to be true. Now, you may not know because you can't be in all of these schools. There are hundreds of schools. You can't be in all of these schools to check on what's happening with that program over which, you know, they're on your remit, but you can't be seeing all of that. And we know about the fragility of the people that I'm talking about. You can't tell a lot of people anything. They're not trying to hear it. So considering the threats that Levi was speaking about, different things happening, monies that are coming in, where that money goes, the threats to your office, because I know that that's happening. I know that you have threats to your office, to the funding of your office, to your staff, et cetera. Of course you would have that in this current climate. What can we do? What is the truth there? How can we support you? Because I know you want to do this job. I know you want this to work. I know you want to be able to retire saying FCPS is no longer racist. Now I can retire. I know that. Wouldn't that be great? So if that's the case, and FCPS is no longer racist, so now Nardos gets to go take a cruise and to do her things and whatever. What do we need to do? Because it's not getting easier, it's getting harder. It's only getting harder.
That was a mouthful. Thank you, Sujatha.
I'm sorry, I apologize. You know, I started, it's hard to stop. I apologize.
Listen, you are who you are, and I appreciate that, right? First of all, you know, I'm going to be honest. I'm disappointed if that was stated at a meeting, you know, that was for equity leads, because the expectation, right, is that I am not the person that's supposed to fix racism in Fairfax County Public Schools. It's not my job to fix racism.
You can't.
It's my job to ensure that everybody in this system is held accountable to the spaces that we create for our students. And you know, the equity leads are supposed to be the equity voice to the principal and to what's supposed to be happening in that school. We have equity commitments tied to each of our goals, and they're supposed to show up. And when they don't show up, I expect that to trickle back up to me so that we can intervene, right?
It trickles back up to you, Dr. King, when it trickles to me. And like I always say, how can I possibly, you know, it's literally throwing starfish back one at a time. And you know, because how many starfish have you helped me with over these years? About 1,000 starfish. But, you know, that's what it takes. It's not possible. It is not possible.
Yeah.
Listen,
it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that we face every day. And, you know, I can't say that I know about every issue that happens, but I do know about a lot. And when I do know about it, right, that we respond in a way that addresses it, holds people accountable, and retrains and supports the principals who are not showing up the way they should show up. And listen, you have experiences in Fairfax County Public Schools. I have experiences in Fairfax County Public Schools. The large majority of the people who show up every day do right by our students, the large majority. There are some that need to be retrained. There are some that need to have serious conversations about, you know, their responsibility in maintaining safe spaces for our students. And, you know, Dr. Reed always says we can't train people to death, right? Like we've created.
How do you train that? How do you, if you've got, I'm seriously curious. I'm seriously curious. So this is a Black Educators Forum. Principals are educators. They are the head of the educators too in a building. It's the most important thing really, because that principal is setting a climate. I know you were a principal. I know you were a principal, Dr. Spikes. I know you guys were principals. You understand this. You know this has so much to do with what the principal demands in a school and what is the ethos and what is the moral standard that is being held here. And that doesn't have to be just Black principals. There are plenty of white principals who are exceptionally not racist, right? There are, of course. But when there's a fundamental sort of thing that I have just seen in my professional experience and certainly in over these years doing this job, that there seems to be this sort of general acceptance that Black parents don't love their children as much as white parents do, and that's sort of an accepted thing. That how do you train that out of somebody who's a professional educator? I don't think you can. I just don't think you can.
So my point is, when I said we can't train you to death, everything is not retraining. We've told you what our expectations are, right? You were trained, we told you, and we have high expectations for how people show up to work and treat kids. At some point, people have to be held accountable, right?
And
If
what's
they
the accountability? So what is
well,
the
there's lots of accountability, right? If there are people who are doing wrong by our children, there are, personnel issues that we don't discuss publicly that happen behind the scenes when people don't show up for our children. And just really throwing the support of my team in schools when things happen. We do that. We show up and demand that people, I can't change somebody's mind about who they are, but I can hold them accountable to the expectations that our superintendent has of everybody who shows up to work for our kids every day. It's the world we live in. It happens in not just in public schools, in every aspect of this country.
It is a thing about this.
But I'm not going to give up, right? Because yes, I work hard every day and I've worked in the system for almost 30 years. There are things that have disappointed me as a parent with my own kids' experiences that even we were talking about 30 years ago that we're talking about today. Yes, but we can't give up, right?
Yeah,
so because that's the alternative.
I just want to throw like Dr. Spikes, let me throw this at you too. You mentioned MSAOC. I have a real beef with MSAOC because MSAOC, I'm not exactly sure what the point is, because I'm really saying that for real. I don't exactly know what the point is because, for example, the MSAOC put out a literacy report every year. We use that showed disparate literacy accomplishments for SOLs for Black students versus white students year after year after year. And nothing happened, right? Just nothing happened. I say this all the time. If it were not for the murder of George Floyd, I am not sure where we would be here in this division, because all of a sudden we had a window where reputational harm became of greater magnitude than the status quo and protecting, the reality. We were able to push through so much. And if you, I know you and I were working together on a lot of things then, Dr. King, that just pushed through, because you knew the window was only going to stay open for so long. You had to get things done. You had to get things done while you could. And the window has closed. But MSAOC, because it is a school board advisory committee, working with staff is running that meeting, right? So even though there are people from the community that join that committee and they represent the needs of the committee, there is no power to the MSAOC. They put together a report every year, as does say TPAC. They put together a report every year, but that didn't ever change what was being done. So I'm talking, when you're talking about accountability, because I'm with you 100%, my concern is this: as Levi's talking about the stuff that's happening in federal, and we definitely have to focus locally and what's going on in state, and that there's a little bit more money coming through and what's going to be done with it, all of that stuff. If you look back just 5 years ago, those were actually the good old days. They were actually the good old days compared to what we're going to be facing in the next several years. So what we could have been doing back then and we didn't do when we kicked the can down the road, say boundaries. You think boundaries are going to be easier now than they would have been if they hadn't kicked the can down the road, years ago? Of course not. Of course they're not going to be easier. So a lot of these committees that we stand are, I feel, performative, and I feel they don't actually. There is no accountability. What happens? There's a report and then nothing happens. And I mean, I don't know what you do when the problem really is that some people just don't like working with certain kind of people because they're that way, or they really think certain kind of kids aren't as good as other kind of kids, and certain kind of parents aren't as good as other kind of parents. And Dr. Spikes, you have to have heard this, because I have, and you're working with family equity and family stuff, and Black mothers are not treated the same way as white mothers are in a special education, in an IEP meeting and whatever. They're just not. And we have been called in so many times because people need support. So I know you guys also, the buck doesn't stop with you. So, the buck doesn't stop with you. As Dr. Brabrand said, our prior superintendent, I don't want to be superintendent of a racist school system. I say, well, yeah, but you are. You are the president and superintendent of a racist school system, as Dr. Reed said, and I fully believe she believes. If we walk by inequity or mediocrity and we do not attend to it, we've lost the moral authority to lead. Well, we already know that you've lost the moral authority to lead because everybody's walking by this all the time, all day long. So I'm just saying, could we maybe think about ways to partner with the information, with different groups? We have so many groups that are working on this stuff, so that we can actually do some accountability, because it's not up to you guys. You are not the ones. You are not the ones who the buck doesn't stop with you. You know, the buck doesn't stop with you. It just doesn't. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you also both need to keep your job. So I'm not going to try to do anything that's going to make it hard. But I would love to partner and find a way. I mean, I think, like, this is a public meeting. This is being streamed. You know, Dr. Reed can watch it whenever she wants. Anybody can, right? And what we could maybe, you know, in this inaugural meeting of this forum like this, think about ways that we can actually just demand that, like, say, principals stop being they don't know. I think they don't know when they're being racist. They don't think it. They don't realize that what they're saying and doing is racist. They don't know. They have to be told. And then it takes a lot. I've had, and it takes a lot. I've had principals rear up. I've been in meetings where the principal used his physical body to come and try to intimidate me. I had to tell him to sit down. Why are you talking to me like that? Why are you talking to her, this mother, like that? They would never do that to a white mother in a million years. Where's the accountability for that? You know, I had other educational leaders, you know, central office people in that meeting. You know, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying about the accountability part. I don't know what you say or do about that, but every single thing, student achievement, discipline, building, the stuff you're talking about, in every level, we are not there yet. And of course, all you can do is go to work and work on it. But you're up against, it's like Sisyphus, Nardos. It's like Sisyphus. You're just pushing that boulder up there, both of you, pushing that boulder up there, and it's rolling back down on you day after day.
Yeah.
I don't need
Iona, do you want to comment on that?
Too long. I'm talking too long. It's 7:20. I'm talking too long. I apologize.
That's all right. It's all right.
Well, but before Iona jumps in on that, Marquis, I'd just like to say to Sujatha, you know, when you say partner, we would love to partner with all members of the NAACP. I would love to see, you know, Sujatha shows up, right? And
I feel like we do partner. We do a lot of stuff together.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I think that everybody who's a member of the organization needs to show up too, right? Like, Sujatha is one voice. She can't be spread thin for everyone. And when you show up and you hold us accountable to what your expectations are, that's another level. So I'm not running from a partnership with the NAACP. I'm not running from a partnership with any organization who wants to not only hold
I've never
us
felt,
accountable.
I have to make it clear, I've never felt like anybody is. Dr. Reed, from Dr. Reed on, everybody, not necessarily principals. Principals are not always thrilled to see me, but, you know, central office, I've never had a problem having these conversations. But these are tough, horrible times. These are dangerous times for vulnerable people. The threats are ongoing. It's ongoing. And we have to raise the level of whatever we have been doing that hasn't been working. It's certainly not going to work now, you know? So it's so we cannot put lipstick on this pig. The whole pig needs to be thrown away and something new. No pigs. You know what I mean? No pigs. Everything has to be new and different.
Yeah, and that's where we need to, you know, continue. And we're starting with this forum, totally new and different, and where we're going to come out of this with an action plan where people are going to know how to contact these organizations, stay in touch, find out the information, get all the good data points from Levi and all the other people doing this great work, so that we can then continue to advance the movement and make sure that we are representing our community in ways that lead us into the future and don't just accept what's being given. So really quickly, I just want to segue right into some of the questions that we also got from the audience. And then those of you in the room with us, we will be opening up the floor for you to ask questions verbally as well as through the chat in a few minutes as well. But we got some advanced questions, and I want to start to throw some of those out there for the group. And you can feel free to, you know, answer if you feel like you have, you know, something that speaks to what people are, you know, wondering about. But one of the first questions that we got was thoughts on how the directive to remove tracking and the disparate impact from the discipline data will impact intersectional populations? Is the first question. So any thoughts on tracking or how some intersectional or all intersectional groups are being impacted by some of the most recent, decisions in our county and particularly throughout the country?
Right. So I think that you're probably referring to one of the executive orders that came down, right? Because we're in Fairfax, we're not, removing anything from the work that we're doing. We're working on our work, and our work in disproportionality is important. So we are monitoring data on a regular basis because that's part of our work. Disproportionality is impacting student learning in our schools, and it's real. And, we go into schools to find the root cause of why it's happening and have hard conversations with administrators, regardless of who they are, what they look like. If the data speaks and it tells us that something is wrong here, then we have to have those hardball conversations around why is it happening, and then support the change that we want to see, and ensuring that, Black, Hispanic, and students with disabilities are not disproportionately disciplined in ways that our white and Asian students are not.
Thank you for that, Dr. King. And I can also, as somebody who works in Fairfax County Public Schools myself, I can definitely attest to how I feel like within the strategic plan, as well as what the vision of Dr. Reed has been since she's got there, as well as your office, it does support as many different people as it possibly can, and it does do the most it can for now. And as Sujatha was bringing up, we just got to get to the point where we're continuing to build on those plans, get some new blood, get some new ideas as to how to confront some of these issues, and just continue to keep offering the greatest support we possibly can. The next question is, I found my question, there you go. What are practical ways we can monitor and impact current education policy in the country? Levi, I think they might be talking to you.
So one, in terms of monitoring, if you're interested in a lot of detail about the various executive orders and which ones are getting enjoined by which courts and who that applies to, I'm going to drop in the chat a link to a Google Doc that's maintained by Education Council. This is the most comprehensive resource I know of on all of the executive orders and their analysis as to how they're not legal in various ways, and then which ones there's lawsuits over. That said, I think for me and for most folks, that's a level of detail that is maybe not super actionable because I'm not a lawyer who's leading one of those lawsuits. I think that, as Dr. King said, I think that local school divisions and teachers and everyone else have a responsibility to keep trying to meet the needs of their students and following their state laws and local policies, most of which provide strong protections for students. And some of these, federal attempts at overriding the law are in conflict with actual laws that need to be followed, and also the goals of the school division, the stated goals of the school division to make sure that, I don't know your exact goals, but I assume it's something around making sure students have the resources they need to thrive and the support they need to thrive and that sort of thing. So I think keeping that in mind, that like we keep doing our work locally despite attempts to stop it, is important. I do think that it never hurts to also be, writing letters to the editor, telling your story in various ways to push back at some of the lies that are out there about what our students need and what's happening in our schools. And then, there are perhaps going to be some attempts to actually move some things through Congress that would be harmful. So making sure that your congressional representatives and your senators are hearing from you. I mean, most of them I think are pretty good on most of these questions, but maybe not all the time on all of them. So continuing to make your voice heard at the federal level. can continue to make a difference. I mean, we are pretty concerned about cuts to family supports, which is not, again, directly an education cut, but cuts to SNAP and Medicaid would harm students in our schools. So yeah, that's I guess my answer.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
Marquis, can I add something to that? So I also subscribe to like the Virginia legislature, and they give you, and you can actually create like your account and see what alerts you want. And so I make sure that I get all of the educational alerts. And so recently I just started sharing that with our FABSE membership. And I'll put that in the chat after I stop talking, but what that link is. But that also helps me know from the Virginia level, like what's going on in the legislature.
All right, well, thank you for that too as well, Dr. Spikes, because before you start typing, I got a question directly towards FABSE here. Is FABSE still having monthly meets, and what are they doing to spread this word about the organization?
We actually don't meet monthly. The executive board does. We have 4 general meetings a year, but we also have like social activities and different networking events. And if there is anything really going on in the community, so for example, we supported, there was an HBCU college fair at First Baptist Church. We attended that. So if there are things going on in the community, we make sure that we show up and represent. Some of the other things that we support on a regular basis are like our job fairs that we have in Fairfax County. I believe HR is having a job fair a month, so we're there to support those. Several of us have been on recruitment trips, even locally through Virginia, Baltimore, Maryland, DC, making sure that we're letting our presence be known and people know that FABSE is here. I think how people know, we have a mailing list. Unfortunately, we're trying to get employee demographics, right? So one of the things that we did this year, which actually increased our membership and our mailing list, is really just like a word of mouth. So we had flyers sent out, created at the beginning of the year, and whether I was at a school or I was, or one of us were in our offices, we would make sure that we shared our flyer to people. We also have our website that's listed there as well. So you can always check the website for any events that are going on. So generally 4 meetings a month. Our last meeting this year will be our scholarship banquet that's happening, I want to say May 28th at the end of the month. But we also encourage people to just spread the word. So bring a friend. We had an event that said bring a friend to FABSE, right? So we're unable to identify people, if you will. So we really have to count a lot on word. But when that's on this call, please make sure you spread the word and share. And I'll just add real quick. Anyone can join FABSE. When I do emails and we send out messages, we say family and friends. All right, so we are family and friends, and anyone can be an advocate. Anyone can be, a supporter of what we stand for as an organization.
Thank you again for that as well. And so here's one that is for the entire room, right? What can white allies do? Sujatha, you want to join in? You're muted.
Sorry. As I always say, the work of educational justice and equity does not belong to Black people, does not belong to Hispanic people. The work for disability justice does not belong to only people who have disabilities. We all own this. And as you've heard me say before, I'm not Black and I do this work. So it's like, everybody benefits when everybody benefits. Everybody, our school system is better, our country is better, our world is better when all of us are well educated, when all of us have place to live, and all of us have healthy families, all of us do better. So there is what white allies can do, I think, is like, I really do think it is important to understand that this is not work that belongs to any one race of people. That's what I think, that everybody should do this, and everybody can do this, but you can't get your feelings hurt. That's another thing. You can't get your feelings hurt when people are saying stuff to you and it hurts you and it's embarrassing, or you feel like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. That's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. If I'm calling out principals for being racist and they just can't handle it and they're just getting themselves all upset, the question is, you have to interrogate is why? Why am I feeling this way? What do I have to feel embarrassed about? Maybe I should think about that, interrogate why I feel this way. I mean, all of us have to do that. And like I just said, I'm not Black. I have to do that all the time. I have to ask myself how I feel. What do I think about these things? You know, it's very important. White allies need to do that first. All of it belongs to all of us, but also you need to be able to interrogate your own feelings without making it somebody else's problem.
Thank you for that. Anybody else care to chime in on that one?
I just think that, you know, white allies, Black allies need to speak up when they see something and do something about it, right? So we all are responsible for creating safe spaces for our students. And when you see spaces that are not safe for students, and like you say, you walk by it, then you lose. We lose, and our students lose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, go ahead.
Disagree 150%, right? Like that's the advertisement, because when you're silent, oftentimes you're complicit, right? And so we want to just make sure that any ally, if you value equity and you value that every student should have an opportunity to be the best version of themselves that they can be, then you have to speak up and you have to speak out and share information. I think that's a barrier, right? Information. And some people have access and some people don't. And so as an ally, you need to educate and share information with others, so that they can be empowered to kind of know what to do and where to go when they need assistance or want to advocate for their children. That's important.
Well, no doubt. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to chime in too that, one thing, being a New Yorker coming down here and being here now, this is my 5th year working in Fairfax County Public Schools. And I tell people all the time, one major difference I see, and going back to your point, Nardos, about making schools safe for students, one thing that I feel like lacks in this system is the dedication to also making spaces safe for teachers and making spaces safe for staff. Um, I find that it's a lax way of sharing information. It's a lax way of training. It's a lax way of investment into talent and developing talent. Um, and the communication aspects around, I feel like people down here really want to get along, and the hard conversations around what we can actually do to improve conditions for everyone are difficult because they have their legacy, they have their history of, whatever the South has going on with it here in Virginia. For all of you who do your historical research and know what Virginia is and what happened here first in 1619, like you might understand what I'm talking about, but some of that is still embedded in this space. And as an outsider coming here, I can pick up on it and sense it more readily than the people who've embedded in it. Like even my wife, like she's been here 30 years and she like is so shocked and surprised when I tell her like, yo, you don't notice that? And it's like, well, that's just how it's done down here. And I'm just like, well, yeah, y'all need to start changing the way y'all doing things. And that's, again, I think the challenge for all of us is to reimagine how we see this space now that we are actually all engaged and have the power to change it. Like that's the one major difference I see down here too, is that we all have the voting power. We all have the community organizational power. We all have the activist power in our own communities, in our own homes, in our own schools, in our own school district to actually make the change necessary. But people have to want to actually fight for that change and understand that the change may be uncomfortable. It may be. And some people may, feel like it might change their existence and threaten their way of life. It may, right? But at the same time, if you are making change to make everyone's lives better, that means no one in this area's lives will be subpar or insufficient. That means that your entire community will grow, because again, communities are only as good as the bottom level of those communities. Schools are only as good as the bottom level of that population that might not even see themselves as academics. And that's the other thing where I'm saying, like, these are conversations that I know we had in other places that I've worked in, where we talked about the fact that not everybody's an academic. Not everybody is really striving as a child to become a thought leader and a person who knows everything, or a person who knows how to articulate correctly, or knows proper English, or knows how to even read at a full level. Like, not everybody's striving for that. So then why is every metric then to either empower those who are already set up with that native language at home and they speak it, and disempower those who may be coming from a different language and a different background and don't have any of the supports in place to make them feel comfortable in their own journey? Whether it's the fact that you know that not everybody is going to become a college professor or even want to be a teacher. So we need to start having those kinds of conversations if we're going to improve the educational climate down here for everyone. And we need to make safe spaces safe for every last stakeholder and every last person participating in this area, because that to me is what's keeping it from actually advancing. And that's what's keeping a lot of the boundary discussion where it's at, where it's a continuous cycle of, just who feels like they're going to be disenfranchised because they got darker skinned people going to the school next to them or walking through the neighborhood to get back and forth from school. Or even how some schools have kids bust in. Like the school I work at has thousands of kids bust in every day. Like, and I'm just like, what? Nobody lives in this area? Like, what's going on here? So, there's a lot of stuff that we can all look at in this area that can be addressed, but we got to have the backbone to stand up and actually do it. Because this fight, like Sujatha even brought up earlier, this fight is not even as dangerous or threatening as some of the fights that people who have given us the freedoms that we currently have had to, navigate through. Like, this is not the abolition of slavery. This is not the civil rights movement of the 60s. But we are now in a position to build off those legacy movements and make a difference. This is not Brown versus Board of Education, even though, if you really are honest down here, we are living in a segregated county that certain parts of it are what it is because they want to be what it is and they're not interested in changing. And then other parts of it, whether you call it the Route 1 corridor or you call it whatever you want to call it, nobody's looking to really improve the conditions to actually make those people whole and to make this community whole. It's a very fragmented community that doesn't really communicate with itself. And until y'all figure that out, and again, I'm speaking as the outsider here because now that I'm a part of it, I feel like I have to speak to it because I'm all about communities improving and growing and being able to serve every last person who may or may not be able to serve themselves. And so with that said, I'm gonna move back into the questions because I'm not gonna get long-winded. I learned a lot from Sujatha, but that's one thing that
Wait. We have to ask Levi what, because Levi's the only white person on here. What, as a white ally, we have to ask.
Levi, I was just gonna skip that one on you, Levi.
Yeah.
Levi is like the actual ally doing this work for marginalized communities as a white person. So I want to hear what they have to say.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, I think that the I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but whoever said the thing about I think it's important to do your own work around understanding sort of your own self-worth and where you're coming from, so that to reduce like fragility in trying to do this work, because like, as you all know, it's not always easy and popular and uncontroversial work to try to dismantle entrenched racist practices and systems. And we're not always going to be perfect in doing so, and it's important that we be open to hearing criticism, and because that's a gift. Like, being shown when we mess up is a gift that someone's giving us, and it's like important to be able to treat it that way. I think on like the less personal, more theoretical side, I mean, I think a lot of what's going on in policy making when people are opposing more equitable policies is resource hoarding. You know, people are trying to hoard resources for themselves and their children. And most people don't want to see themselves as doing that. But I think that's the reality of what's often going on when people oppose new boundary lines for schools or things like that. So I think that that's a hard thing to combat. But when we have honest conversations about what's going on, it's I think can help people see what's maybe why do they have that feeling in their stomach when they hear about the idea of this, you know, proposed boundary change or whatever, and maybe they can interrogate that and move to a place of being willing to support it. So I guess that's my initial thoughts.
I'd just like to jump in here based on something Marquis said as well. As you know, we are going through this boundary process, and you know, we're getting ready to go into community meetings, and I highly recommend that the NAACP, you know, partner with the school system to ensure that your members show up at the meetings. You know, again, if you think it's performative, right, but you don't show up and put your voice at the table, then that's what you're going to think it is, right? But if you go to the meetings and you put your voice in the room, and whether they accept what you said or not, right? You can't say that they didn't listen to you if you don't show up and put your voice in the room. I think it's very, very important that people in different communities show up at these meetings and put your voice at the table. You know, I've lived here for 30 years and I've seen, you know, different boundary issues. This is the first time that we've had in my 30 years here that we've had a comprehensive district-wide boundary review. That takes, you know, courage to do that, I believe. You know, it's one thing that I'm proud that the board voted to do that, because when I remember when they built South County, and I live in Springfield, and I remember people knocking on my door, you know, wanting me to sign a petition so that our neighborhood could go to the new school. Well, my neighborhood goes to Lewis. And, you know, and I questioned the people because I worked for the school district, and I said, why are you doing this? Right? We live closer to Lewis. Well, because we don't want our kids to go to school with those kids. I was like, are you talking about my kids? Right? So you have to speak up, right? So then what did I do? I went to those meetings and I spoke up about what people were saying. Because I think that when you go to these boundary meetings, you don't see a lot of people of color. So it's important that if Dr. Reed is taking people to the community, taking the meetings to the community, that you show up and you let your voice be heard. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to go in there shouting. You just have to go in there and participate and put your voice in the room.
Thank you for that, Dr. King, and that is absolutely true. And hopefully we'll get more impact and more participation in NAACP getting out and doing that. And, you know, me and Sujatha will definitely be showing up at any instance. And we got a strong excommunication as well as a strong president here too, and Nikki Zimmerman, that will be out and about, particularly now in this time of action that is necessary for all of us to be uplifted.
And one thing we can say is, like, with regard to the boundaries, that no one is going to be able to say in this county that there was not a comprehensive community involvement, which is what they will say. They have, I'm sure that they say it's genius on the part of Dr. Reed to put together. I mean, how are you going? It's every 2 weeks or something, all of these people and community meetings. You are not going to be able to say that to her, that we did not have. There is enough expertise, logistical expertise in that building to be able to do this boundary review comprehensively and make good sense decisions without involving this community. A bunch of people who don't know anything about anything sitting in a room. We all know we don't know anything about anything, really, and we're just sitting in the room and we're looking at interesting information and interesting data. But that is extreme. That is the argument that people use. Oh, you didn't talk to the you did this without talking to us. This was that. I mean, the courage of that board to make the decision to do this in an auditorium full of screaming, angry people holding up signs, crying, putting their children, sacrificial lambs, up there to make this whole argument and say, no, we're going to do this anyway. Hate mail, all of that. It took a lot of courage. And then you put together a comprehensive boundary review, and, you know, boom, boom, boom. What are you going to say? Because there is the professional expertise to do this without us. There really is. So you aren't going to be able to say anything anyway. Nikki,
So
we're
I'm
not
also
taking
gonna-
questions from the floor yet until we announce.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Sorry.
opening it up. It's just that now I'm thinking back to when we first got on and wondering whether or not people can actually raise their hand or
Nikki just did, so maybe she's a co-host though, so that's true. I don't know.
yeah, you know what I mean? I'm wondering if the non-co-hosts can raise their hand or even access the chat to type into the chat. And that might be our
The answer is yes to both. They can raise their hand, and yes, they are able to enter questions into the chat to
I think we ought
all
to
of
do
the
it in the
co-hosts.
chat, but we're not going to get finished by 8.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Any questions that come up, you know, we can follow up and put out our follow-up report. And there are 2 more questions that we got asked online that I was going to get to if nobody has any questions where they don't want to raise their hand, because we still have 2 more questions that I got to get to. So I think that we'll move there. And if anybody else does want to come in with a question, feel free
Nikki
to
did raise her
chime in.
hand and I shut her down, which wasn't very nice of me. So
And,
now-
we have there is another hand.
All right, so let's go. Call on them.
Well, she's put it down now. I guess you all were talking.
It was Tara and Nikki
Okay.
that I saw.
All right, so I'm gonna get into this other question that we had, which centered around what is being done at specifically the high school level to remediate for the poor literacy instruction these students have received.
So I can share that this year we adopted a new literacy screener assessment for our high school students. It helps identify whether students' reading needs stem from foundational skill gaps or comprehensive challenges. And by pinpointing the root issue, our teams can offer more precise, effective interventions. I got that information from our ISD department, I'm not gonna lie. But we continue to offer a variety of reading intervention classes for our students because we do recognize, you know, this was just last year that we changed our literacy approach in Fairfax, right? So there are several students that didn't benefit from the changes that the current students are going to go through. And we recognize that some of our students reached high school reading below grade level. And, you know, high schools now have reading teachers and they have a responsibility of making sure through this new screener that they are identifying students who need that support and giving the interventions that they need.
Thank you for that, Dr. King. And yes, that's one thing too, where I know that the strategic plan speaks very highly, and I know Sujatha did a lot of work to also bring light to how we want to close those literacy rates and improve those rates as well. And one thing I want to throw out there too is being someone who's been here to see the dedication to improving, those literacy rates is also just a alternative counter view to it as we look at the data in that and give ourselves some grace and give our students some grace to not necessarily identify them at their literacy levels. And I feel as a teacher who's been teaching for 25 plus 30 years or however long I've been teaching and working in education and doing research and closing achievement gaps, that a lot of times these data metrics don't come with a understanding for the user to actually implement them into their daily way of life. And a lot of times they're then used as descriptors of human beings that then don't have any real substance for helping a person achieve in life. So again, like, does it really matter if a person is not the greatest reader at 3rd grade? Is that data point truly what's going to define where they can go in life, especially today, with the added advent of technology and the fact that most kids are reading? It just may not be what is in a textbook or in a school provided resource, right? But they're reading their text, they're reading their social media, they're reading whatever advertisements and products they want to buy. So are we not looking at the totality and the holistic approach of helping students themselves understand what literacy really is? And also the other caveat to that too is literacy only those who understand English well? And that to me is, again, another problem. And being a New Yorker, that's something that we never even talked about in New York, around the fact that you had to be able to read fluent English to be a fluent reader. because we know that there's multiple languages that people are fluent in that may not be English. And that's the setup of how certain communities are then disenfranchised here, because then they're always compared to other communities who are embedded in that English language. Like they get to talk it every single day at their dinner table, at their breakfast table, from the minute that they were born. And is that a natural advantage that we're not actually looking at that creates the gap naturally? And so I want to broaden the conversation around those literacy rates too. Not saying we don't need to improve them, but saying that do we really need to put so much stock into what those rates might say, especially
might have me like blowing my, I might have a stroke listening to you.
well, hey, I don't want you to have a stroke, but I do
Because
want
yes,
you to...
my answer to that is yes, we do. Yes.
Well, again, I think, if you only look at it through the lens of success being academic in a certain sense of having to understand English and reading the English classics, because again, like we know that there's already a attack on books that are divergent, that are neurodivergent, that are culturally divergent from even what people want to be allowed to be used in school. We know that there's a approved reading list even in FCPS, and who got to make that list? You know, do we know who made that list and why certain authors and certain books are not approved to be used in classrooms? So that's, again, where I want to broaden that conversation. Again, I'm not saying it's something that people should not be able to read. Yes, but should it be a descriptor of what your future capabilities will be, especially knowing, even looking at our billionaire class and even looking at our celebrity class, how we have people who are highly successful that did not necessarily do well in school or even dropped out in college. So we need to broaden that mindset, because we are disenfranchising too many students by holding them accountable to a literacy rate that still doesn't necessarily determine exactly what they're capable of doing. And they may be artists, they may be singers, they may be business minds, they may be entrepreneurs, and better communicators than readers. And so we need to keep that in mind as well. Last question.
Marquis, can I just share something? Because I know how important our literacy work was to Sujatha. She was a cheerleader and an enforcer behind this. And, you know, this is our first year with our BASIL. And I did,
it's our
sorry, our third year in our BASIL, but
oh no, it's our first year with our BASIL. I'm sorry. Yes, I thought you
we've been doing the work for the last couple of years, but this is the first year that the BASIL has been implemented across our elementary schools. And at the last Literacy Community Advisory Committee, they shared some data, right? Because, you know, and I think Sujatha is part of this group as well. But through our VALS testing, which is our K-2 testing, and our iReady for 3 through 8, trends across all grades were improvements. We're not where we need to be, and I'm not saying that, right? Because this is year one. But positive growth for our key groups. Kindergartners saw the largest gains, especially for Black students, 17.6% improvement, and students with disability, 15.7% improvement. Grades 3 through 8 showed consistent improvement through smaller increases, ranging from 3.2% across Black, Hispanic, and students with disabilities. Now, of course, we still have some challenges that, you know, hopefully in the next year or two, we're going to continue to see these trends grow. But our grade 6 Black students, the gap narrowed by 6.1 percentage points. Our grade 4 students with disabilities gap narrowed by 5 points. And where we see our biggest areas of concerns, that our grade 4 Black students, the gap widened by 3.9%, and our grade 5 students with disability gap widened by 2.2. So we are talking the talk and we're walking the walk, right? We're monitoring the data, because we know what gets monitored gets done. And, you know, every week, you know, we as the leaders in this district monitor our work and our strategic goal plans to ensure that we see continuous improvement. And when we don't, the question is asked why. And we all, you know, diverge into that issue to make sure that by the next time the data comes around, we see improvement. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Dr. King. And that data was definitely important.
And I am part of that group, and I have not gotten emails. I think I've gotten accidentally kicked off of the distribution because I haven't seen that come through. So I will definitely contact
Noel.
she retires.
Okay.
So in closing, since we're here, you guys have been amazing, and I want to thank you so much for spending time with us, and I hope our audience got a lot out of that.
I want to make sure that before we, Dr. Reed actually has been with us on this call, and want to acknowledge that she came and joined us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for this meeting. I appreciate you coming out and taking some time to sit with us. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
Marquis,
Reed.
also somebody sent me a direct message and asked how can they save the chat because you have all that information in there. How can they have access to all the links after the meeting?
All right, that's our technical person who are allowed to answer that question. Is there any way for people to save the chat unless they just take pictures on their phone real quick and we'll leave them?
Right. If that person wishes to put it in their email in the chat, I will email it to them.
Right.
Perfect. So if that person heard it, please put your email in the chat. Anybody else that wants it to, put your email in the chat. If you did the survey, we'll have your email too. And that could also be one of your requests in the survey. Please fill out the survey. I'll post the link one more time too as I'm closing out. And we'll definitely leave the room open for a couple minutes to allow people to
I know that President Nikki and our president of the branch and Tara, your wife, had raised their hands.
Tara says she was just testing it to make sure.
Thank you, Tara, for testing it for us.
Yeah,
and our president had a question.
So yes, Nikki, you got a question?
Yes, I did. It's a question and a comment, really. First of all, I would like to thank the panel for coming. Sometimes you come in uncharted waters and you don't know what to expect. You don't know which way the conversation is going to go, left or right. And you all just really took it in stride, especially the two doctors that we have here. You really didn't know, where the conversation was going to go. And, Sujatha is Dr. Hampton, who's also our second VP. She is very passionate, very, very passionate about education. In particular, I believe education for our students with disabilities because they're the most vulnerable. And then we talk about the Black students and things. And sometimes I tease Sujatha, Dr. Hampton at times, and I say, "Oh, you get a little more madder than the parents." But I like to thank her for her leadership. But my question and comment and concern is really rooted in not just personal experience, but when we look at the complaints and the concerns that come through into the branch, these are viable complaints and concerns. And sometimes when we take them to the schools or when we, open up the conversation to FCPS staff, it's really, until we start peeling back the onion and becoming persistent, it's really as I would say, sometimes you all close ranks. You close ranks and protect the ones who are somebody give me the word, but you protect the principals, you protect the teachers, you protect the ones who are inflicting whatever type of harm on our students, on our parents, on our students. And I look at sometimes when you may have a parent with English as a second language, and they can articulate themselves very well. I've seen firsthand where they will be dismissed because of that language barrier, right? And they may not understand how to push forward with the complaint. So I guess what I'm saying is, and I heard Dr. Hampton mention about, the racism within FCPS, which is very real because we get the complaints and they're viable complaints and we see them get worked out and things like that. But we also have issues with just inadequate leadership within schools, whether they are Black, white, Hispanic, green, purple, and blue. And what we've seen is that they have a buffer, and that buffer is the regional superintendents. And they provide them top cover when parents make concerns or make complaints. And then when parents elevate them, you all provide additional top cover to what's going on, and it undermines the experience of the student and the advocacy of the parent. So when we talk about, Fairfax NAACP, we should partner with us, should do this, should do that. I ask you to proceed with caution, because when you're asking us to partner with you, we have no problem with collaborating, right? but we will also hold you accountable for everything that you all do in relation to our students, because you all don't seem to understand, in my opinion, you all do not seem to understand what happens and the blowback to when these students go to school and they're afraid to go to school because they're being bullied, or their parents don't speak the language, so they're afraid to come in there and speak up for their own children. You all seem to forget, once you all provide the top cover that you provide, that there's a family out here that's suffering, and then they come to organizations like the NAACP Fairfax County branch and say, we need your help because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And then when we come and we start smacking hands and say, you know, you're wrong for that, then you all work onesies and twosies. So I just wanted to kind of just say, yes, we were working collaboration and in concert with you all, but you have to come to the table correct, because we are not an organization who will stand by idly and say, well, you know, we're partnering with them, we're collaborating with them, so we really can't say anything. We will hold you all's feet to the fire, and that fire will get hot, and then those toes will start burning, because we believe that all of our children deserve an equitable education. They do not need to be dismissed. And this happens again at the hands of principals and regional superintendents who are Black, white, green, purple, and yellow. So while there is a race issue, there is also an issue with other things as well. And we will work together with you to mitigate those situations. But you have to understand where we stand as an organization. But I do thank you all for coming. And I'm excited at the possibility that we may have in the future to collaborate and to do different things. But I will also say we have teachers. I've gotten phone calls and emails about teachers who are being mishandled and mistreated. And I specifically do not believe that a person who went to college for all these years to teach our students needs to be treated in the way that they're being treated. We need SPED teachers. The ones that we have are overworked, underpaid, of course. We have other general ed teachers who are overworked and underpaid. And we have to make sure that we are giving them the tools and resources that they need to be able to teach our children. Really quickly, I remember during the pandemic, there wasn't a parent at home who could not wait for those teachers to get those students. We were all sitting there on pins and needles. I cannot wait for them to get the students, because we understood in that 1 year how difficult it is for teachers to do the work that they're doing. We just got a little bit taste of what teachers do endure, I would say, especially with the new curriculum and learning how to, do different things online. But thank you again. We will hold you accountable. We will hold your hand with love. We will hug you while we're correcting you. But that is what we are here to do. So Dr. Hampton, Marquis, thank you so much for facilitating this forum. It is very important. I look forward to the next in-person that you all have been teasing us with Dr. Reed. I have my popcorn sitting here. Whenever you all are ready to have, I have my popcorn and I'm ready to see.
It's a great conversation last time. Next
It
time
was. So thank you all again, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you guys
Nikki,
so
and
much.
closing this
I
out,
really appreciate it. Thank you
I
so
wanna-
much, Nardos. Thank you.
I want to welcome
and thank
in.
you.
We will be having a fall educator forum, and we will be inviting everyone again. So please, panelists, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody stay safe, stay blessed, and continue to do the great work that you're doing. And please join these organizations, whether financially, fiscally, or just in spirit. Let's collaborate and let's continue to make our communities greater. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
I just want you to know that I am a card-carrying member of the Fairfax
I know
NAACP.
you are. I know you are. I know you are.